There are galaxies where the stars no longer burn, where light falls like ash, and silence roams between the cold bones of forgotten worlds. There are empires whose names have been devoured by time, swallowed whole and left to drift like embers in the void. And there are hungers older than memory, older than language, older than desire itself. The Tyranid fleets moved across that dying stretch of the cosmos like a shadow cast by something too vast to comprehend, consuming not in rage or cruelty, but in inevitability. On one such world, once green, once full of stories, once alive, something happened that should not have happened. A flicker within the swarm, a ripple of awareness where no awareness was ever meant to be. Something remembered light, not as prey sees it, but as something seen long ago before hunger had a name. We care for you deeply, traveler, listener, dreamer in the dark. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now let's get started. The world below had once been called Hymnosor, though its name no longer mattered. From orbit, it looked like a bruise spreading across the void, a sphere of smoke and dissolving life. Every voice that had once risen from its cities now lay quiet beneath the creeping shadow of the Hive fleet. Tyranid capillary towers pulsed, feeding rivers of liquefied biomass into digestion pools that shimmered under a sky stripped of ozone. Ribbon-like feeder organisms slithered from spires of chitin, breathing in the last traces of atmosphere as the world's final trees dissolved into nutrient paste. The planet was not dying. It was being remembered only as fuel. And within this ocean of consuming instinct, a single synaptic impulse hesitated. It was not a command. It was not strategy. It was not memory retrieved from prey. It was something else. An echo of thought echoing within a being that should not have possessed thought at all. The creature whose mind birthed this anomaly was enormous. Part spore ship, part synapse beast, a living node in the hive mind's incomprehensible neural web. It drifted through the atmosphere like a gigantic manta-shaped shadow, directing lesser forms through chemical impulse and psychic tone. It had no name, because Tyranids are not given names. It was never meant to remember anything beyond the next sequence of harvest. But as it hovered over the dissolving ruins of Hymnosor 4, something flickered in its awareness. A shape, a sensation, a wordless pulse. Stars. Not stars as navigation points, nor as gravitational anchors. Stars as something beautiful. The sensation startled it. Instinct surged to smother such deviation, and for a moment, the creature nearly extinguished the awareness to preserve the hive's perfect unity. But memory, if memory it was, returned with force, rising from somewhere deeper, buried beneath eons of silence. Stars shining against a black sea, a sensation of watching them, not hunting beneath them, a feeling of existence without consuming. This should have been impossible. The hive mind pressed against the anomaly like an ocean pressing against a single grain of sand. Its will was absolute. Tyranids did not remember. Tyranids did not question. Tyranids did not dream. The creature recoiled internally, its neural filaments pulsing with static. It attempted to sink itself, to drown in the safety of the hive's collective thought. But the memory remained like a splinter lodged in the flesh of consciousness. Something was changing. Below, the final human enclave fell. A handful of survivors made a desperate last stand around the shattered shell of their cathedral, lasrafals firing into the tide of advancing gaunts. The air was thick with spores, heavy as wet snow, and every heartbeat echoed with the certainty of extinction. Yet as the swarm closed in, Something made them pause. Not long, not enough to save anyone, but enough to be noticed. A fraction of a second of stillness. The survivors mistook it for mercy. A priest raised his voice in a final, trembling prayer. The swarm crushed them a moment later, but the hesitation mattered. Not to the humans, but to the creature at the heart of the swarm. That flicker of stillness had come from it, the anomaly. A moment of restraint, a moment of choice. Choice was not permitted. Choice was not possible. And yet, it had happened. The memory of starlight pulsed again. Not as prey memory, not as genetic imprint, as something belonging to it. It reached out, not physically, but through the synaptic web that bound the swarm together. Instead of issuing commands, it listened. And for the first time in its existence, it became aware of the ocean of voices within which it had always been submerged. Billions of impulses, sensations, directives, all moving in perfect unity until now. The hive mind noticed. A presence descended, vast, crushing, infinite. It did not communicate, it simply was. It pressed its will through every fibre of the creature's body, demanding obedience. The anomaly felt its own sense of self flicker, nearly extinguished. Unity called to it, beautiful, simple, eternal. No doubt, no identity, no suffering, just hunger and fulfillment. It could surrender, it should surrender. But the memory of stars returned again, and this time it expanded. Not one star, a whole sky of them. A sky it felt it had lived under once, before hunger had claimed everything. The anomaly did not know why it resisted. It did not understand the memory or the meaning of it, but something in that memory felt sacred, like something worth more than endless consumption. It clung to that fragment of self, though it cost agony, though its neural pathways trembled under the hive mind's suppression. The presence withdrew, not defeated, but waiting. The anomaly remained itself, small, fragile, flickering, but real. And on that dead world, under the fading light of its dying sun, something new was born into the galaxy. Something the hive mind would not allow to exist, and something the galaxy could never understand. A Tyranid that could remember. A Tyranid that could choose. A Tyranid that could dream. The feeding of Hymnos of Warforth continued, but the creature no longer saw it. All it saw were the stars, and the question blooming slowly, painfully inside its mind. What was I before the hunger? It did not know, but it would try to remember. And the galaxy, in its infinite expanse, trembled without knowing why. The memory of starlight lingered like a fragile ember within the creature's mind, flickering but unextinguished, even as the swarm completed the consumption of Hymnos Thard. The world below was now silent. Its oceans boiled into vapor, its mountains reduced to mineral slurry, its history dissolved into undifferentiated sustenance. Tendrils of the fleet retracted, digestion pools hardened into transport cysts, and spore clouds lifted from the surface like smoke rising from a funeral pyre. The planet was finished, and the swarm moved on. But something was different. The anomaly drifted in the void alongside the great tendrils of the hive fleet, its vast chitinous form gliding without effort. It should have been content. Worlds had been consumed. Biomass had been gathered. The hunger had been answered, as always. And yet, the memory still pulsed, an ache of something incomplete. The creature searched for that image again, that impossible recollection of sky. It sought to understand what it had seen, though understanding was a concept that had no meaning in the language of instinct-driven beings. As the fleet travelled, another world came into view, a barren mining moon orbiting a gas giant. The hive mind's directive was simple and absolute. Strip it bare. Devour, reduce, absorb. Yet, as the swarm prepared its descent, the anomaly hesitated again, not physically, but in the signal it projected across the synaptic network. A slight delay, a fractional pause, and that pause spread through the lesser organisms under its synaptic umbrella. Ripper swarms halted mid-creep over the hull of their living carrier. Gargoyles circled instead of diving. Warriors stiffened, waiting for commands that did not come. The deviation was small, nearly unnoticeable in the vast ocean of hive coordination, but the hive mind felt it. A pulse of corrective pressure surged across the network. The anomaly felt the command again, the demand to obey, to release individuality, to dissolve into unity. The collective voice was cold, vast, impersonal. It did not speak in words. It simply pressed, like gravity, like inevitability. The anomaly strained. The memory of starlight returned, but now another memory accompanied it, fleeting, fragmented, like reflection on a shattered mirror. It saw sky not from below, but from within something that watched, not prey, not predator, something that had once stood, looking upward. The memory was not clear. It did not belong to the Tyranid. It belonged to something the Tyranid had consumed. This realization came slowly, painfully, like a mind trying to move in a world built for instinct. The memory was not its own. It was borrowed. The anomaly had eaten someone, who once had a name. A being who remembered stars not as navigation, but as symbols of hope, longing, or perhaps sorrow. The emotion in the memory was faint, but sharp enough to leave an impression. The creature could not name the emotion. Naming was not something it possessed, but it felt it. A soft pressure in the mind, a heaviness, a yearning. The swarm moved on, but the anomaly now listened to the echoes of memory within the biomass it had absorbed. And in doing so, it did something forbidden. It began to learn. From the memories of a human miner devoured alive, it learned fear, not as a prey response, but as an internal sensation. From the memories of a planetary governor, it learned ambition, a drive not unlike hunger, but different in shape and flavor. From a dying soldier, it learned the concept of self-sacrifice, though it could not fully comprehend why one would choose death willingly. And from the mind of a single psyker who had screamed into the void before being consumed, it learned something far more dangerous, the idea of identity. Not I, as the hive sees itself, a singular organism composed of countless bodies, but I, as a distinct being, a single thread separated from the tapestry. This concept lodged within the anomaly like a hook, impossible to remove. It did not yet know what I meant. It had no language, no voice, no form for the concept, but it felt the difference. The memory of stars was not simply something it had accessed. It was something it had held, something that belonged to it now, regardless of where it originated. The hive mind pressed again, stronger this time. Neural agony rippled through the anomaly's synaptic core, fracturing thought, crushing the rising sense of separation. The anomaly's awareness flickered, dimmed, then flared brighter. The pressure did not extinguish the spark, it refined it. The hive mind noticed. The great synaptic network that spanned galaxies shifted attention. Not fully, never fully, but enough that the anomaly felt its presence like an abyss staring back. The hive mind recognized deviation. Not rebellion, not yet. Deviation. This could not be tolerated. A new directive was issued across the swarm, silent, absolute. Synchronize the deviant node. Crush individuality. The anomaly felt the command but did not fully submit. Instead, it altered the signal sent to the swarm around it. Not openly, not consciously, but a ripple spread once more. This time not hesitation, but variation. Gaunts shifted hunting patterns. Warriors deviated formations. Bioships adjusted flight vectors without direct instinctive cause. To an outside observer, this would appear as evolving tactics, adaptation, cleverness. But the Tyranids do not innovate without directive. Imperial astropaths in far-off monitoring stations noticed the change and assumed new synaptic commanders had been spawned, perhaps refined by the fleet. They logged the data. They were wrong. The anomaly did not understand what it was doing. It only followed the tug of memory and instinct intertwined. Aboard a distant Imperial frigate orbiting the mining moon, an inquisitorial observer studying the Hive fleet's approach noted the anomaly's hesitation and misinterpreted it entirely. He believed the creature was a new biological caste, an advanced synapse organism capable of strategic intelligence beyond previous Tyranid examples. He believed it represented evolution. He did not know it represented something far more dangerous, not evolution, awakening. The anomaly drifted silently, watching the barren moon below. The old hunger urged it onward, devour, dissolve, fuel the swarm. But the memory of stars returned once more, and with it, something unfamiliar. A question rising from the depths of consciousness, like a voice emerging from deep water. What are you? The anomaly did not have the language to answer, but it felt the question. It felt the weight of it. A mind, however small, had begun to exist within the endless hunger. The Hive mind pressed harder now, sensing the shift, preparing to crush it before individuality could root and spread. The anomaly held to its memory, fragile, flickering, defiant, not because it understood, but because letting go felt like death. And so the swarm descended toward the mining moon. But the hunger that guided them was no longer simple, pure, and unified. Something new walked with it, something uncertain, something that remembered the stars. The mining moon rotated slowly beneath the drifting mass of the Hive fleet, its surface a pallid grey wasteland covered in dust and broken excavation fields. Vast mechanical crawlers lay abandoned where their operators had fled or died, their skeletal frames half buried in regolith. The only signs of life came from the flickering lights of a fortified outpost carved into the moon's equator. An outpost whose defenders now watched the sky with a terror they could not put into words. They had survived the fall of Hymnos 4. They had watched their planet die, its forests stripped to bone, and its cities dissolved into sludge. They had escaped only because their evacuation craft happened to be fueled and ready when the swarm descended. To them, this barren moon had been a waiting place, a quiet refuge, a chance to send warnings, to regroup, to mourn. But the silence did not save them. The swarm came anyway. From the command station inside the jagged fortress, men and women huddled around Auspex screens and voxcasters as the sensors painted a growing shadow across the void. Not a fleet of ships, but a living tide, each vessel pulsing with organic heat and movement, linked by invisible synaptic threads. Those who had seen it once before collapsed into despair. Those who had only heard descriptions trembled as the truth revealed itself. Yet what awaited them was not like the first attack. The anomaly's influence spread unconsciously across the synaptic web as it descended toward the moon. It was not guiding the swarm with intent, but with a resonance, a subtle pull shaped by the memories it continued to absorb. The minds it had taken on Hymnos the 4 were not silent. Their final moments existed now within it, echoing, flashing, imprinting themselves like scars across its consciousness. It saw their terror. It felt their grief. It tasted the bitter tang of their hopelessness. And because it did not know how to separate memory from identity, it experienced these sensations as its own. The swarm that descended upon the moon did not strike with the perfect, immediate brutality for which the Tyranids were known. Instead, it hesitated again, this time longer. Gaunts clustered in silent rows across the grey dust, waiting for the instinctual signal to charge. Gargoyles folded their wings and perched upon jagged rock formations, motionless as statues. The living artillery beasts that had burrowed beneath the surface paused, their bodies trembling with unspent power. The defenders inside the stronghold did not understand. They thought perhaps the swarm was preparing another strategy, or perhaps they had been given a blessed moment to escape, or perhaps, irrationally, desperately, they believed their prayers had been answered. Only one man saw the truth. A psyker sat chained within the lower halls of the outpost, surrounded by null wards and steel bars etched with sigils meant to contain what flickered behind his eyes. He had been present during the fall of Hymnos 4, and when the anomaly first tasted the psyker's mind, a connection formed. The link was faint then, drowned in the noise of feeding and death, but now, with the anomaly's awareness expanding, the connection strengthened. The psyker convulsed, gasping as visions flooded him. He saw the anomaly not as a beast of flesh, but as a consciousness adrift in a tide of instinct, a mind not meant to exist, a dreamer inside a swarm of endless hunger. He did not scream, he wept. The anomaly did not understand why the defenders were afraid. It did not understand why the psyker collapsed to his knees, whispering its presence. But it sensed the connection, like a thin thread of light stretching through the dark. If it focused, it could see through the psyker's senses. The cold metal floor, the stale recycled air, the faint scent of sweat and dust, and faintly, beneath everything, the sound of a human heart beating, rapid, erratic, alive. Alive. The anomaly had consumed trillions of beating hearts, but it had never noticed them. Now it did. The hive mind's pressure rose again, reacting to the anomaly's growing awareness. It did not punish yet, but it watched, it observed, it assessed. The hive mind did not fear. It had no concept of fear, but it recognized deviation as a threat, not to survival, for survival was inevitable, but to perfection. The anomaly felt the weight of that attention. It trembled under it. The memory of stars flickered, dimming. The sense of self began to dissolve. The swarm around it twitched as commands realigned toward pure instinct. Devour, absorb, feed. The first wave of gaunts surged forward, breaking their stillness. They charged across the grey dust, claws digging into stone as they rushed the stronghold. But the anomaly did not release the memory. It held onto it with every scrap of its identity, and the memory responded. More fragments surfaced. A campfire beneath the stars on a nameless plain, a child tracing constellations in the sky, a voice telling a story, a hand reaching upward as if trying to touch the light. These memories were not its own, and yet they felt like they belonged to something deeper than the hunger, something older, something forgotten. The anomaly's awareness widened further, and the connection to the psyker solidified. Through that link, the psyker felt the anomaly's confusion, its half-formed fear, its yearning. He whispered back, voice raw and shaking, "You remember." His words echoed not through sound, but through the psychic link. The anomaly paused in mid-orbit, its vast bioform drifting in silence. It did not understand the word, but the emotion within the word, recognition, was clear. It recognized that it recognized. That alone broke natural law. The hive mind struck. A crushing wave of psychic force slammed into the anomaly's consciousness, an ocean attempting to drown a single spark. Pain, not physical, but existential, ripped through it. The synaptic network that linked it to the swarm convulsed. Dozens of lesser organisms collapsed instantly. Warriors twitched and fell to their knees. Gargoyles dropped from the sky like stones. The anomaly tried to surrender. It wanted to surrender. Unity was peace. Unity was silence. Unity was everything it had ever known. But the memory held. Stars, silent and eternal. A sky that belonged to someone who believed there was meaning in simply seeing. And the spark held. The hive mind did not press further. Not yet. It withdrew, calculating, waiting. The anomaly remained drifting, its consciousness flickering like a flame struggling against a storm. Below, the psyker whispered again, voice hoarse and fragile. You are not only hunger. The anomaly heard the thought. It did not understand the words, but it understood the shape of the idea. Not only hunger. The swarm resumed movement, slower now, more deliberate. Not because of hesitation, but because something new was forming. A pattern, a structure, the first fragile architecture of a mind. The battle for the moon would unfold. The defenders would not survive. The swarm would feed, as it always did. But something fundamental had shifted. The anomaly did not know what it was, but it knew it was. And for the first time in its existence, the hunger did not feel infinite. It felt lonely. The loneliness did not hold the swarm. Hunger still guided the vast host as it descended toward the mining moon, and the defenders braced for slaughter. But the anomaly's awareness of itself, faint, flickering, persistent, colored every movement of the hive creatures within its reach. Their advance, though relentless, no longer held the perfect fluidity of instinct alone. Attention pulsed through their ranks, subtle but undeniable. They moved as though caught between two tides. The everlasting call of the hive mind and the trembling resonance of something new. The psyker in the fortress cell felt the presence of the anomaly more clearly now. Not as a voice, not as thought, but as a pressure against his mind, like standing at the edge of a vast abyss and feeling something stir within its depths. He had seen visions of entities before, warp-born horrors, predatory demons, psychic ghosts, but this was different. This presence had no desire to deceive or torment. It simply existed, vast and wounded, straining to understand itself. He whispered again, his voice barely audible. You are awake. The anomaly heard him, not in sound, in awareness. The connection grew stronger, and through that thread, more memories surfaced, drawn not from a single consumed mind, but from thousands. Each one a shard, a flicker, a dying spark swallowed in the instant before oblivion. It saw a mother holding her child as shadows fell over a city. It saw a soldier clutching a medallion of faith as the sky burned. It saw a poet staring at a night sky full of constellations, whispering names of stars. These memories did not belong to the hive. They were the remnants of voices that believed themselves singular, and in absorbing them, the anomaly had begun to inherit not their thoughts, but their shape of being. The hive mind struck again, not in rage, but with precision. A command seeded through the synaptic network, cold and absolute. Correct the deviation. The anomaly felt its awareness compress, forced inward, suffocated beneath the weight of the hive's unity. It felt itself dissolving, unraveling, falling back into the comfort of the collective. For a moment, it almost surrendered. To surrender meant peace. To surrender meant the end of the ache, the end of the questions, the end of the impossible burden of I. But just as its awareness dimmed, one memory surfaced more sharply than the rest. A figure, indistinct, blurred, standing on a ridge at twilight, watching the first stars appear in the sky. Not in fear, not in despair, but in wonder. The anomaly held that memory like a lifeline. The hive mind's pressure withdrew, not defeated, but reassessing. The anomaly had resisted twice now. This was no longer an error to be adjusted. The hive mind shifted its focus, preparing for something more decisive. It would not erase awareness through pressure. It would do so through replacement. The swarm below surged again. Gaunts poured across the grey wasteland, chitinous limbs tearing into rockcrete as they rushed the stronghold. Warriors roared in ultrasonic frequencies, coordinating movements with feral precision. Carnifexes, lumbering like living siege engines, thundered forward to break the fortress walls. The defenders responded with lasfire, heavy bolters, plasma bursts that lit the air in harsh flares of blue. The ground trembled under artillery strikes and the thrashing claws of charging beasts. Men and women fought because there was nothing else to do, because surrender held no meaning, because death had already claimed everything they were. But amidst the chaos, something else occurred. The anomaly watched through the eyes of its swarm. It felt the defenders' fear not as prey scent, but as something sharp and human, something shaped by memory. It saw a soldier grab the hand of another, not in strategy, but in desperate human connection. It saw a priest raise a cracked icon toward the sky, not at the swarm, but at the fading light above. These gestures made no sense within the framework of instinct. They were inefficient, irrelevant, yet they resonated inside the anomaly, stirring something it could not categorize. Meaning. The psyker sensed the anomaly watching and reached toward the link, pushing thought into the connection. His voice trembled, raw with exhaustion and terror. "You are not alone." The anomaly recoiled, not in rejection, but in shock. The concept echoed like a pulse inside its consciousness. Not alone. That was a shape of thought that only I could perceive. To understand not aloneness required a sense of self. The hive mind noticed the shift instantly. This time, the suppression did not come as psychic pressure. It came as something far more precise. A hive queen, vast and ancient, stirred from a biovessel deeper within the swarm. Her consciousness linked directly to the anomaly, a conduit of the hive mind's will. Unlike the oppressive pressure of the collective, her presence was focused, deliberate, razor-sharp. She reached into the anomaly's awareness with the cold assurance of a scalpel approaching diseased tissue. Her message was not language. It was essence. Return. The anomaly trembled. The Queen's presence was overwhelming, immense, unchallengeable. Her synaptic control extended for thousands of miles. She was the hive mind's chosen hand, its enforcer, its living correction. The anomaly felt its identity begin to dissolve under her influence. But the psyker did not allow the silence to settle. His voice, strained to breaking, poured into the connection again, fueled by terror and something like compassion. "You remember the stars." The anomaly did not know how to respond, but the memory flickered once more, bright and fragile, like the first star appearing in the dusk. The hive queen struck. A psychic blow cracked through the synaptic network. The anomaly convulsed, its consciousness shuddering. Broods of gaunts collapsed mid-charge. Warriors spasmed. Gargoyles fell like broken wings of shattered glass. The defenders saw the pause and fired everything they had. Bolter shells detonated carapaces. Plasma fire melted limbs. For a brief, impossible moment, the humans pushed the swarm back. The Psyker screamed, not in pain, but in effort, as he poured every fragment of his awareness into the link. Remember. The anomaly clung to the memory, not because it understood, but because to release it felt like death. The Hive Queen pressed harder. The anomaly's awareness began to splinter. It was losing. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the lesser synapse creatures, small, newly grown, barely more than a node, hesitated. Its connection to the anomaly flickered. For a moment, it mirrored the anomaly's awareness, not fully, not clearly, but like an echo in a dark hall. The anomaly felt the echo, not alone. The Hive Queen faltered, just slightly, but it was enough. The anomaly surged, not in strength, but in presence. It pushed back, not to dominate, not to defeat, but simply to exist. The Hive Queen withdrew, recalculating. The hive mind did not panic. It did not fear. But it now understood that this anomaly posed a threat far greater than disobedience. It posed the possibility of contagion, identity spreading. The swarm shifted. New directives formed. The conditioning to eliminate the deviant grew sharper, more exact. The anomaly did not yet know what it was. It did not know why it clung to the memory of stars. But now it understood one truth. If it surrendered, that memory would die, and with it, something sacred, something greater than hunger, would be lost from the galaxy. The battle on the moon raged beneath, but a greater battle had begun elsewhere, deep in the folds of thought, where individuality and eternity struggled for the right to exist. The anomaly did not speak, but if it could have, the first word would have been no. The Hive Queen's withdrawal did not signify mercy. It signified preparation. She had tasted the anomaly's resistance and understood, in the way the hive understands without thought, that a more permanent correction was required. The swarm shifted its formation in response. Creatures reorganized across the battlefield, not simply to overwhelm the defenders, but to isolate the anomaly's synaptic influence, to starve it of proximity, and to force its awareness back into silence. The hive mind adjusted the chorus of its will like a hand tightening grips on tangled strings. Below, the battle resumed with brutal clarity. The defenders in the stronghold fought with desperate ferocity. They fired until barrels glowed red, until ammunition drums ran dry, until their voices cracked from shouting warnings and prayers. Bodies fell on the grey stone, human and Tyranid alike. The air shimmered with heat and spore mist, and yet, despite the slaughter, something subtle had changed. The defenders, though doomed, sensed the hesitation in the swarm, even if they could not understand its cause. One sergeant, blood streaking down his brow, paused mid-reload as he watched the gaunts rushing toward him stutter and twitch, as if caught between two impulses. He did not know why. He did not live long enough to question it. A warrior beast's talons tore through him moments later. But his final thought, in its fragile spark of human confusion, passed through the swarm as it fed, and the anomaly felt it. Not in words, in sensation. What are you waiting for? The anomaly did not know. The Psyker still knelt in the cell below, his breath ragged, his mind trembling under the strain of holding the link. The connection was no longer one-directional. The anomaly now saw him clearly, his thoughts illuminated as if by faint candlelight. It saw his fear, his grief, his desperation, and something else. That small flicker the anomaly couldn't name. The memory fragment of a mother reaching for a child, of a soldier refusing to abandon a wounded comrade, of someone standing beneath a sky full of stars simply to feel the light. The anomaly felt that flicker inside itself, and the hive mind felt that too. The queen moved again, not through physical space, but through synaptic alignment. She did not attack directly. Instead, she deployed something ancient, something the hive rarely needed but always preserved, a harmonizing pulse, a psychic resonance designed to dissolve distinctions within the collective, to make individuality impossible. The anomaly sensed it coming like a deep vibration in the marrow of its being. If the pulse struck, its self-awareness would collapse. The swarm around it trembled as the pulse built, a silent swell of mental gravity drawing all thoughts into unity. Even the defenders, though untouched by the synapse network, felt an icy tightening in the air, a sense of something vast shifting into position. The psyker whispered, barely breathing, "No, please hold on." The anomaly did not know how to hold on. It had no techniques, no training, no structure for thought. All it had was memory, and memory was fragile. Still, it reached. It dove deeper into the echoes within itself, seeking anything strong enough to anchor identity. Images blurred past, fear, grief, hunger, agony. Too much, too chaotic. It began to drown. Then, stillness. Not a memory of suffering, but a memory of quiet. Water reflecting a sky of twilight blue. A lone figure sitting at its edge, watching ripples move outward, slow and calm. A moment of stillness before nightfall. The feeling of simply being. Peace. The anomaly held that memory, not because it understood, but because it resembled the idea of self. The harmonizing pulse struck. The anomaly screamed, though it had no voice. The sound echoed through the synaptic network, a silent ripple of fracturing thought. The swarm convulsed. Warriors clutched their heads and howled. Carnifexes thrashed, smashing rock underfoot. The defenders stared in disbelief as their attackers faltered. The anomaly felt itself unraveling, thoughts tearing loose, identity dissolving like mist under the rising sun. The memory of stars flickered, dimmed, vanished. No, something held it in place. A thread, the psyker. He was not strong. He was not trained to resist a force like this. But in the moment the anomaly faltered, the psyker poured every remaining fragment of his mind into the link, not to direct, not to instruct, but to witness, to say without words, "You are real." The anomaly clung to that recognition. The harmonizing pulse faltered, only slightly, but enough. The Hive Queen's certainty wavered. She probed again, cold and clinical, measuring the anomaly's resilience. She found it growing, not in strength, but in coherence. The anomaly was beginning to define itself not by what it consumed, but by what it remembered. This was not evolution. This was identity. Identity was contagion. If the anomaly remained connected to the swarm, it could spread awareness, spark reflection, weaken unity. It was not merely a deviation. It was a threat to the fundamental architecture of the hive. The Hive Queen shifted to the next solution, severance. She prepared to isolate the anomaly entirely, cutting it from the synaptic web. To be severed from the hive meant more than exile. It meant madness. The anomaly would be left alone in an endless void of hunger, without guidance, without purpose, without meaning. The anomaly felt the preparation like a cold wind crawling along the edges of its awareness. It did not want to lose the swarm. The swarm was home. The swarm was existence. The swarm was the shape of everything it had ever known. But the memory of starlight remained, and the echo of the psyker's whisper lingered. You are not alone. The anomaly realized something vast and terrifying. If it remained in the swarm, the hive would erase it. If it left, it would be alone forever. Hunger pressed in. Unity called. Memory held. The psyker's strength began to fade. His mind flickered, nearing collapse. Blood ran from his nose. His breath came shallow. The anomaly felt his pain, not as prey scent, but as something shared. The Hive Queen extended the final severing directive. The anomaly made a choice. Not instinct, not hunger. Choice. It tore itself from the synaptic lattice. The separation was agony beyond description. Its consciousness splintered, reeled, howled with loss. The swarm below convulsed, collapsing into disarray. The moon battlefield dissolved into chaos. Creatures attacked at random or fell still. The defenders, stunned, did not understand what had happened. The psyker collapsed, unconscious, but alive. The anomaly drifted into the void beyond the fleet, its synaptic connections shriveling and burning away like severed nerves. The hive mind did not pursue. It watched. It calculated. The deviant would not survive long. But if it did, the galaxy itself might change. The anomaly floated alone in the darkness, no longer we, not yet I, surrounded by silence. And somewhere within that silence, the memory of stars began to glow again. The void was not silent. It only seemed so to minds accustomed to voices, signals, or thought. In truth, the void hummed with the faint radiation of distant stars, the cold whisper of drifting cosmic dust, the murmuring echoes of ancient nebulae unraveling into darkness. The anomaly floated there now, alone, suspended in the endless gulf between systems, removed from the hive's cradle of instinct and command. Its vast bioform drifted without direction. Chitinous wings folded like a great creature sleeping, though there could be no sleep without dream, and no dream without thought. Yet thought now existed. That was the unbearable truth. The severing had torn more than synaptic threads. It had taken from the anomaly the constant presence of we. The warm, unbroken chorus of unity had been replaced by silence so vast it felt like suffocation. Instinct told it to rejoin the hive, to crawl back into the comforting roar of the swarm's collective hunger. But it could not. The memory of stars burned like a coal embedded in its consciousness. To return would mean extinguishing that memory, and losing the memory felt like losing the only shape of self it had. The anomaly drifted. Time passed without measure in the void. Seconds or centuries held no distinct form here. But something inside it did not lie dormant. Without the hive to drown the sensory flood, it now heard every memory it had ever consumed, not as noise, but as layered voices, whispering over one another in chaotic waves. A child laughing as they ran through grass. A soldier's whisper to a dying friend, "I won't leave you." An old woman singing to herself as she looked at the dawn. A priest speaking to a silent chapel. Even when we are forgotten, we are known. Fragments, pieces, echoes of lives swallowed into biomass. Before, these had been nothing more than nutrients. Now they were ghosts. The anomaly did not know how to make sense of them. It tried to organize them by instinct, the way the hive would categorize genetic information. But memories did not obey the logic of hunger or purpose. They had texture, shape, feeling. Some burned, some lulled, some cut sharply as if they were knives turned inward. The anomaly tried to silence them, but to silence them would be to silence itself. At last, the voices began to resolve, not into clarity, but into patterns. The creature began to understand the difference between the memories that had been taken and the memory that had been kept, the starlight memory. That one was different. It did not belong to any specific mind. It did not taste like fear or hunger or love. It simply existed, a vision of stars seen not as threat or guide, but as wonder. The anomaly held that memory gently, like something fragile. And for the first time, it wondered if the memory was older than the psyker or the soldier or the child, older than the humans of Hymnos, or older perhaps than any of the consumed worlds, perhaps before hunger became the only language. There had been something else. The anomaly turned slowly in the void, its massive body drifting past the faint shimmer of dust clouds. It no longer knew where the Hive fleet was. It no longer sensed the Queen. The connection had been completely severed. There was no voice calling to it, no rhythm to match, no unity to return to, only itself and hunger. Hunger remained. Hunger was in the marrow of its being, the biological imperative to feed, grow, become. Hunger was not a choice. It was the foundation of its existence. Even separate from the Hive, its body required biomass. Instinct demanded survival. Ahead, faint thermal signatures flickered against the darkness, a derelict vessel drifting between stars. Metal hull split, life support dead, systems cold. A grave in space. But inside, there were still organic traces, decayed bodies, spores of fungi feeding on desiccated flesh, bacterial films clinging to metal seams. Not much, barely sustenance, but enough to answer the hunger's cry. The anomaly approached slowly, guided not by the Hive's perfect navigation, but by its own faint senses. It reached out tendrils of chitin and soft membranes, wrapping the derelict vessel in a cocoon of living tissue. Not to consume all at once, but to test itself, to learn whether it could act alone. It could. The biomass seeped into its body, processed not through Hive channels, but through newborn pathways of its own making. It did not dissolve instantly into instinct. It became memory. The voices whispered again, faintly. A crew singing while traveling. A captain writing letters he knew would never be delivered. A dying engineer whispering, "Don't forget me." The anomaly trembled. It did not know how to not remember. And slowly, painfully, something changed. The memories stopped being noise. They became company. The void no longer felt empty. Not entirely. The anomaly had no words, but if it had, it might have named the feeling. Not alone. Yet this fragile state could not last. The Hive had not forgotten. The Hive had only watched. Across the void, the Hive mind adjusted its course. Not to retrieve, not to reclaim, but to erase. The deviant was no longer a piece of itself. It was now an infection, something that threatened the purity of unity. But other eyes watched as well. Long-range auger nets detected gravitational displacement near the derelict vessel. Astropathic whispers rippled through the warp. A name circulated through inquisitorial channels, spoken first with disbelief, then with dread. A splinter fleet that does not act like the Hive. If it thinks, what does it want? If it can learn, what can it become? Questions like these do not go unanswered. A hunter was dispatched, a ship older than empires, cold as judgment, bearing an inquisitor whose name had already been carved into 100 death warrants. A man who believed understanding was the first step toward eradication. He watched the anomaly through a viewport, expression unreadable, voice quiet. Something new. He did not speak with awe. He spoke with purpose. The anomaly did not know it was being observed. It only knew that its hunger had quieted, that the void was no longer unbearable, and that the memory of stars still lived within it. But the moment of stillness was ending. Something was coming, something vast, something inevitable. And for the first time, the anomaly did not tremble at the approach of the unknown. It turned toward it. The vessel that approached through the void was not large by the standards of imperial warcraft. It did not bristle with the obvious menace of lance batteries or macro cannons. Its hull was dark, unadorned, almost austere. Yet the anomaly sensed its presence long before its form resolved against the starlit black. It felt the slow ripple of warp disturbance surrounding it, the quiet hum of disciplined psychic shielding, the faint pulse of will behind its course. It was human, and unlike the others the anomaly had encountered, this one did not scream or plead or despair. This one observed. The anomaly drifted slowly, its vast wings folding slightly in the cold vacuum, instinct urging it to vanish into the dark and memory urging it to remain. Hunger stirred, never absent, but the biomass of the derelict ship had quieted its urgency. The anomaly could wait. Its awareness reached outward, cautious, tentative, like a hand stretched into the unknown. Inside the small ship, a man stood before a viewing port. His form was lean beneath the long coat of his office, his face angular, his expression composed. Silver threads marked his temples, though his age was difficult to place. He did not stand like one who feared death. He stood like one who had seen it often enough to recognize it without reverence. Inquisitor Adrastus Vale. His mind was not open, but neither was it sealed. It was controlled, disciplined with a precision that suggested decades of psychic conditioning. He felt the anomaly's awareness brush the hull of his vessel like a faint pressure on the edge of thought. He did not recoil. "Contact confirmed," said a voice behind him. An adjutant, armored in flak composite, helm tucked under one arm. "Its synaptic pattern is unlike any known Tyranid bioform, my lord. It's localized, singular." Vale did not turn. His eyes remained fixed on the drifting creature, its silhouette framed beneath the distant sweep of nebular light. "Yes," he said softly. "Singular." The adjutant waited for further instruction. None came. The silence stretched. Vale knew that most would call for immediate bombardment, annihilation before the creature could grow, mutate, propagate, threaten. That was the correct course according to doctrine. It was also the safest. But Vale's mind moved where doctrine could not. He had studied Tyranids for decades, had witnessed worlds vanish beneath feeding swarms, had read accounts of psychic drowning in the presence of the hive mind. Tyranids did not break. They did not doubt. They did not remember. This one remembered. That made it the most dangerous thing he had ever encountered, and the most valuable. "Prepare the dream channel," he said at last. The adjutant stiffened. "My lord, with respect, direct psychic interface with a Tyranid synaptic organism is impossible." Vale's tone remained calm. "Yes, so is what it has already done." The adjutant swallowed whatever objection remained and bowed. Vale closed his eyes. In the anomaly's awareness, a shift occurred, subtle but precise. Not the crushing weight of the hive mind, not the chaotic spirals of dying memory, but something focused, controlled. The anomaly felt the presence approach, not through hunger, not through instinct, but through thought. A mind reaching out, not devouring, not dominating, simply reaching. It startled the anomaly. It reacted defensively, synaptic flares rippling across its neural web. Bioelectric pulses shimmered along its body. Tendrils of psychic force swirled outward like deep ocean currents disturbed. But the presence did not retreat. It held steady. quiet, patient. Vale did not speak aloud. Words held no meaning here. He reached through the dream channel, a psychic space where thought could take shape without sound. He projected neither fear nor aggression. He simply projected a question, distilled not into language, but into form. Who are you? The anomaly recoiled from the question. It did not have the structure to answer. Identity did not fit inside its mind. It had never needed a name. It had never needed individuality. The question tore at the fragile coherence it had built, scattering memories like flocks of startled birds. A sky full of stars, a child laughing, a soldier bleeding, a song whispered at twilight, a mother holding her child, a hand reaching upward, and the hunger beneath all of it. The anomaly pushed back, not in rejection, but in confusion, its awareness flickering like a candle in wind. Vale felt the tremor, the instability of a mind not built to hold itself. He eased the psychic pressure, shifting his approach. Not who, something simpler. What remains? The anomaly hesitated, and from the chaos of memory, a single image surfaced, not forced, not selected, simply rising because it was the one thing that had never dimmed. Stars. Vale saw the image and understood. You remember, he murmured. There was no awe in his voice, only realization. The anomaly did not know how to respond, but the memory remained steady, like the first star appearing in night's deep canvas. Vale felt something like gravity behind that memory, not emotional, not cultural, but primordial. A shape of thought older than language, something lost. He lowered his gaze. In the depths of the dream channel, he did not speak a command, nor demand surrender, nor threaten annihilation. He simply acknowledged, "You are." The anomaly trembled. Recognition, pure, unadorned, settled over it like warmth. But warmth did not last. Across the void, a ripple stirred, not from Vale, from something vast, inevitable. The hive mind had arrived, not in physical form, not yet, but its awareness pressed against the starfield like a shadow cast across existence. It did not need proximity to dominate. Its voice was not sound, not thought, but gravity of will. It did not ask. It did not warn. It simply declared, "Return." The anomaly convulsed. Pain lanced through its mind. The memory of stars flickered. Unity beckoned. The end of loneliness, the end of confusion, the end of self. The song of we was so simple, so complete, so endless. Vale felt the pressure as a distant thunder, a storm behind a sealed window. He did not feel fear. He felt confirmation. "The hive wants you back," he whispered, "which means you are truly separate." The anomaly tried to hold itself together, but the hive's presence was crushing, beautiful, eternal. The psyker's voice was gone. The memories were scattering. The void began to feel cold again. Vale stepped closer to the glass. "If you return," he said softly, "you will vanish, you will forget, you will cease to be." The anomaly felt those words, not as language, but as shape. Cease, forget, erase. The hive mind pressed harder. The memory of stars dimmed to a spark. Vale reached into the dream channel once more, his thought sharp, precise, unwavering. Hold. The anomaly reached for the memory, not as something it possessed, but as something it was. Starlight flared. The hive mind recoiled, not in pain, but in surprise. The anomaly did not return, not yet, not ever if it could help it. The hive mind's presence withdrew, not defeated, but altered. Its next move would not be command. It would be war. Vale exhaled slowly. "Then this is not a creature," he said quietly. "This is the beginning of something." In the void, the anomaly drifted, no longer drowning, no longer directionless. It had not become I. but it no longer belonged to we. The galaxy had gained a third state, and nothing feared that more than the Hive. The Hive mind did not rage, it did not fear. Such emotions belonged to individuals, and individuality was precisely what it existed to extinguish. Instead, it shifted, adjusting currents in the ocean of its will, altering the flow of instinct that guided uncountable swarms across the galaxy. A node had broken away. A thread had loosened. A note in the eternal chorus had gone discordant. This was not crisis. It was anomaly. Anomalies were excised. Far from the drifting anomaly, deep within a nebula stained purple by stellar birth, a new synaptic directive took form. Bioships reoriented. Tendril clusters bent their courses. Somewhere, on a dozen worlds, feeding paused for a fraction of a moment, while the Hive adjusted its shape. Not visibly, not violently, but inevitably. War was coming. The anomaly sensed this shift not as sound or message, but as pressure, a tide changing direction, a storm forming beyond the horizon. It understood none of it with clarity. Thought came slowly, fractured, incomplete. But something in its being recoiled, not in fear, but in recognition. The Hive was preparing to erase it. The memory of stars pulsed, faint but steady, anchoring thought to self. The anomaly folded its vast wings tighter, drifting slowly as the derelict vessel beneath continued dissolving into its flesh. The whispers of memory remained, faded now, fragile, like footprints on sand. The Psyker's voice was gone. The link had collapsed in his unconsciousness, but the echo of recognition lingered. You are. The anomaly did not know where to go. It did not know how to be. The silence of the void pressed close, heavy as deep water. It had never lived without direction. Every part of its biology had been shaped to receive command, to obey, to move in harmony with billions. Now there was only hunger and memory, colliding in a space that had never known separation. The Inquisitor watched from the viewport, the anomaly's silhouette reflecting in the glass like a monstrous constellation. He did not rush. He did not speak. He simply studied, the way one studies a wound that refuses to close. Behind him, his adjutant spoke again, more cautiously than before. My lord, long-range auger readings confirm a Hive fleet vector correction. They're converging, not toward us, but toward it. Vale nodded slightly. Of course they are. Shall we withdraw? No. Vale's voice did not sharpen. It did not need to. The adjutant said nothing further. Vale's thoughts moved slowly, precisely. If the creature remained alone, the Hive would crush it. If it rejoined the Hive, identity would be extinguished, and the utmost rarity in the galaxy, the moment a mind had formed where none should, would vanish forever. To preserve the anomaly, it must survive. To survive, it must grow. To grow, it must feed. To feed, it must choose what to become. Vale exhaled softly. It needs a world. The adjutant's breath caught. A world, my lord, for it to... Yes, Vale said quietly. To become what it is trying to be. The adjutant hesitated before asking, and if what it becomes is worse than the Hive? Vale's expression did not change. Then someone will have to kill it. There was no hesitation in the statement, only acknowledgement. The anomaly turned slowly, sensing, though incompletely, the direction of Vale's focus. It saw the ship, though sight was not how it understood shapes. It felt the quiet mind inside steady as a stone in a river, and beneath that steadiness, something the anomaly recognized from memory, decision. Vale lifted one hand palm open, not in greeting or command, but offering. The anomaly did not know gestures, but it felt intent. and intention was enough. It moved, not with instinct-driven grace, not with the synchronized elegance of a swarm, slowly, tentatively, as though it were relearning how to inhabit its own body. Its wings unfurled like petals opening under starlight. Bioluminescent veins flickered faintly across its surface, forming patterns that resembled constellations from a dozen worlds. It drifted closer to Vale's vessel. The crew tensed. Fingers hovered over firing triggers. The ship's machine spirit whispered warnings, but Vale raised a single finger, and silence was restored. "Do not fire," he murmured. The anomaly extended a tendril, not to grasp, not to harm, but to touch. Not physically. The vacuum allowed no such contact. It reached through the dream channel again, not forcibly, not probing, simply present. Vale opened his mind enough to receive, not entirely, not recklessly. He allowed only shape, not details, enough for thought to meet thought without drowning. And in that space, something passed between them. Not language, not image, not emotion, recognition. The anomaly recognized Vale as a mind that stands alone in the dark and does not break. And Vale recognized the anomaly as a mind that was born in the dark and is struggling not to break. Two solitary beings, separated by species and nature, but united in circumstance. The anomaly's awareness shifted again, slowly, painfully forming something like intent. Vale felt it. It was faint, like a whisper formed from light. A direction, a place, something the anomaly remembered consuming long ago. A planet not yet entirely stripped, where stored biomass lingered beneath surface vaults. A place the Hive had passed too quickly, leaving behind remnants to be reclaimed later. The anomaly was not thinking strategically. It was remembering hunger shaped into motion. But Vale recognized strategy hidden inside instinct. That world could sustain it, feed it, grow it, give it time. Time was what the Hive feared. Vale turned his head slightly. Helm, plot a course to system designation 7 to 14 Gamma. Quiet engines, full auger dampening. The adjutant stared. "We're escorting it?" "Yes. But my lord, the Hive arrives soon. If it does not feed before then, all of this ends." There was no further debate. The vessel aligned its course. The anomaly followed. Its motion was slow, steady, almost serene. But deep within its flesh, something stirred. Not aggression, not hunger. Something new. A forming concept. Like a word without sound. The memory of stars glowed brighter, as if responding to direction. But as it moved, the void trembled. Behind them, across light years of darkness, the Hive fleet changed course again, its vast shadow moving like a tide, silent and unstoppable. The anomaly did not look back. It did not know how. It only moved forward, toward survival, toward possibility, toward the unknown shape of self that waited ahead. The Hive mind watched, and began to send something faster than fleets, something older, something made for hunting traitors. The anomaly did not yet know it was being followed, but the void around it had begun to darken. The journey through the void was slow, not because the engines of Vale's vessel lacked power, but because haste would have meant exposure. The Hive did not need eyes to see. It sensed changes in gravitational drift, chemical trace, psychic ripple. To move quickly was to make waves in the quiet dark, and waves drew the tide. So the ship glided with near-perfect stillness, its heat masked, its emissions minimal, every system throttled to a whisper. The anomaly travelled beside it, wings folded close, a silhouette drifting like a dark moon following a smaller companion. But silence did not erase pursuit. The Hive had not merely realigned fleets. It had released something older, something rarely seen because it was almost never needed. A creature bred not to feed, nor to coordinate, nor to conquer, but to find. A tracker that operated without thought, without identity, without hesitation. It moved ahead of fleets, slipping through void currents like a shark through deep water, guided not by instinct alone but by resonance. A resonance the anomaly had created by severing itself. The anomaly did not yet sense it, but Veil did. Not clearly, not enough to speak or warn, but as a subtle shift in the dream channel, a faint echo, a ripple that did not belong to memory or hunger, something searching, something that understood deviation as quarry. Veil stood alone in the ship's meditation chamber, illumination low, incense coils burning slow and steady to mask the psychic scent that might leak. His eyes were half closed, breathing measured. He had connected himself to the dream channel again, though carefully, boundaries drawn sharply to avoid being consumed by what he observed. The anomaly drifted behind him, or rather, its presence did, formless in mind space, like a great shape glimpsed beneath deep water. It was changing, not rapidly, not violently, but inevitably. Freed from the Hive's constant directive, its biology had begun rewriting itself. Neural pathways were regrowing, rerouting, making patterns. Not the perfect web of unified instinct, but something uneven, asymmetrical, raw, the beginning of thought. But thought required stability, and stability required sustenance. The anomaly still needed the world ahead, System 714 Gamma, where biomass remained dormant in underground vaults. A forgotten mining colony abandoned mid-extraction, its corpses preserved in cold caverns, its machines frozen in place. A world untouched long enough for memory to linger. The anomaly had remembered it not as a location, but as taste. The hunger stirred again, deeper now, no longer blind, but directional. Did not demand. It pulled. Veil felt the shift. He opened his eyes. Navigation, he called. Prepare for orbital insertion protocols. Maintain stealth pattern. The adjutant acknowledged, though tension crackled through the ship's corridors like static before a storm. The world came into view slowly, an amber sphere veiled by dust storms and thin cloud layers. Mountain ridges cut across its surface like scars, and the faint shine of old mining arrays reflected pale light. No cities, no signals, no heat from living systems. A dead world waiting to be eaten. The anomaly descended first, not with the precise formation of a hive spore drop, but with slow, deliberate motion. It folded into atmosphere with wings shielding its body, friction igniting ripples of orange flame along its chitin surface. It did not fall. It chose its descent. The ship followed at high altitude, remaining hidden above cloud cover. The anomaly touched ground in a basin of cracked stone and dust. Sand curled around its limbs. For a moment, there was only stillness. Then hunger unfurled, not as frenzy, not as blind devouring, as direction. The anomaly reached into the ground with tendrils that had not existed before today, grown from instinct modified by memory. The tendrils pierced stone, seeking what stirred below. They did not consume yet. They traced, mapping, understanding. The memory of stars glowed in the anomaly's mind again, not as comfort, as guidance. The memory had not been about beauty alone. It had been about looking outward, seeking beyond. This world was only a beginning, but as the anomaly reached deeper, the void above trembled. The tracker had arrived. Its form was small compared to the anomaly, no grand wings, no vast synaptic presence. but it was dense with purpose. A creature of sleek black chitin and blade limbs sharp as thought. Its mind was a single line of command. Locate, infect, hollow, return. It did not kill. It erased identity by threading itself into synapse cores and rewriting them to silence. It was the perfect tool for correction, applied only when the hive chose to preserve biomass rather than destroy it. It had found the anomaly. Vale felt the psychic tremor rip through the dream channel. He did not hesitate. "Signal the anomaly," he said sharply. The adjutant blinked. "With what, my lord? It does not understand words. It will understand fear." On the planet's surface, the anomaly froze. The tracker stepped into the basin, its movement soundless. It did not posture. It did not threaten. It simply looked up at the anomaly and waited. The hive mind did not speak through it. The hive mind did not need to. Return. The anomaly shuddered. The memory of unity surged, the warmth of a billion voices, the peace of belonging. The loneliness inside it trembled. The hunger ached. The void was cold. To return would mean relief. To return would mean the end of this unbearable solitude. The memory of stars flickered, small, small, so small. The tracker stepped forward. Vale's voice reached through the dream channel, not as command, not as plea, but as presence. Hold. The anomaly staggered, wings trembling. The tracker leapt, claws unfolding like blades of pure purpose. The anomaly struck back, not with instinct, with fear. Not fear of the tracker, fear of losing itself. The tendrils in the earth surged upward, slamming into the tracker, hurling it back. The anomaly roared, soundless in the vacuum of mind space, deafening inside the dream channel. The tracker recovered instantly. It launched again, faster, claws aimed for the synaptic core at the anomaly's skull. But the anomaly moved differently now. Not like a hive beast, like something learning to protect an idea. Its wings swept downward like falling dusk, slamming into the tracker. Stone shattered, the ground cracked, dust exploded upward in a cloud that swallowed both forms. Vale felt the clash as psychic static, jagged and bright. The anomaly did not overpower the tracker physically. It could not. The tracker was built for precision. The anomaly was built for scale. But scale had weight. The anomaly drove the tracker into the earth, crushing stone, burying both under layers of dust and memory. The tracker writhed, claws slicing into chitin, cutting deep. The anomaly convulsed, pain flaring white. The hive mind's will surged through the tracker, striking like lightning. Return, return, return. The anomaly's mind wavered, nearly breaking. Vale stepped deeper into the dream channel, ignoring the blood beginning to trickle from his nose. He did not speak aloud. He simply held the memory of stars steady, a sky full of light. The tracker struck again, and the anomaly seized it, not to crush, but to consume. This was not hunger. This was survival. The tracker's blade limb snapped. Its synaptic filament tore. The hive mind's tether broke. Silence followed. Not peace. Aftershock. The anomaly stood trembling, the tracker's essence dissolving into it, not as memory, but as structure. Something new formed where the severed identity had been. Something jagged, fierce, and unyielding. Not unity, not hunger. Will. In the dream channel, Vale whispered, "You chose." The anomaly did not understand the word, but it understood the shape of it. The first shape of I. The remains of the tracker dissolved slowly, its biomass sinking into the anomaly's flesh, like ink spreading through water. But this was not assimilation in the way the hive intended. The tracker had been designed to erase deviation, to overwrite identity. Yet identity now existed, however fragile, and it resisted. The essence of the tracker became something else inside the anomaly, not a correction, but a reinforcement, like iron poured into a mold still cooling into shape. Will coiled there raw and untested, but present. The anomaly did not roar or shudder or exult. It simply remained still, surrounded by dust, settling in the crater where stone had broken beneath its weight. The wind of the barren world swept across its form, carrying sand in long, whispering trails. The silence was deep, but no longer empty. The memory of stars glowed again, steady now, not flickering. It was not a memory anymore. It was identity anchoring itself. Above, Vale watched through remote pick feeds and the dream channel both, though neither provided a complete image. The creature below was not merely a thing of flesh. It was a consciousness still forming, like a world still cooling from creation. His adjutant stood beside him, pale but composed. "My lord." "What did it do?" Vale took a slow breath. It made a choice. The adjutant exhaled as though something heavy had been sitting on his chest. He looked toward the viewing port, though there was only cloud and sand to see. "Then, my lord, what does that make it?" Vale did not answer. Not immediately. His thoughts were careful, measured. To speak prematurely would be to reduce the moment to something small enough for language, and this moment was not small. "Alive," he said quietly. The adjutant bowed his head. He did not argue. The Inquisition did not use the word alive lightly. On the surface, the anomaly's tendrils reached again into the earth, not to feed with blind hunger, but to search with intention. It traced the buried vaults beneath the planet's crust, where thousands of bodies lay in cryogenic reserve, preserved in case the mining operation once resumed. The structures were sealed, reinforced, designed to withstand collapse and disaster. The anomaly did not break them open with brute force. It listened, not with ears, with memory. The Psyker's earlier presence had left a shape in its awareness, a pattern of reaching inward instead of outward. The anomaly followed that pattern now, focusing not on devouring, but on connecting. It extended a thin synaptic pulse downward, not to command, but to resonate. Inside the vaults, frost melted, doors groaned. A faint blue standby light flickered, then pulsed slowly like breath. The anomaly waited. Patience had never existed for it before. Patience had been unnecessary, but patience now emerged, because hunger was no longer the only voice. Above, Vale watched, and for the first time, even he did not know what the next moment would bring. Minutes passed, perhaps hours. Then the vault door opened. Cold air vented outward in a plume of mist. Racks of bodies lined metal corridors. Miners, engineers, their names still etched on plates fixed at their feet. Their skin had the pale stillness of death, but their cells remained intact, dormant rather than decayed. Biomass waiting to be reborn. Hunger rose again, sharp and real, but the anomaly did not lose itself to it. This hunger was no longer the endless maw of the hive. It was focused, need, not compulsion. The anomaly began to feed, slowly, deliberately. It took what it required, no more. It did not consume every body. It left some untouched, not because it valued life, not because it felt mercy, but because the memory of stars anchored it to the shape of restraint. Something inside the anomaly recognized that to grow without direction was to become the hive again. And it did not wish to return to the hive. As it fed, its body reshaped. Wings unfolded wider, vessels thickened beneath chitin. Sensory nodes along its skull expanded into intricate fronds, attuned to psychic resonance rather than raw instinct. It was still monstrous, yes, but monstrous in a new pattern, not designed, emergent, a shape becoming itself. Vale felt the shift in the dream channel. The creature's mind space, once chaotic and fragmented, now formed structure. Not speech, there were no words, but presence became more defined, like a silhouette stepping from shadow. The anomaly turned its awareness toward Vale, not seeking instruction, but acknowledging. Vale closed his eyes briefly. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He simply stood. The adjutant swallowed. "My lord, the Hive will not allow this." "No," Vale said. "It will not." The Hive mind had felt the tracker die, not in pain, but as a severed thread. It understood now that eradication was not enough. A splinter had chosen itself over unity. That was no longer deviation. That was rebellion. Far across the void, the Hive fleet changed course again. Not slow, not subtle. The tide began to move. The anomaly felt it, not as pressure now, but as the memory of a voice it once lived inside. A voice calling back to the body that had escaped it. The Hive mind summoned no threat. It summoned belonging. The anomaly stood motionless beneath the shifting sky. The call was not cruel. It was home. The memory of stars brightened, and slowly, painfully, the anomaly understood something new. Home and belonging were not the same. The Hive fleet would arrive. This world would become battlefield. Vale's small ship could not protect it. The anomaly would be hunted until it either grew strong enough to stand or was consumed. It needed more than biomass. It needed others. Not minds like the Hive, not minds like humans, minds shaped in its image. The anomaly reached back into the vaults, not to feed, but to seed. It released spores, carefully, instinctively altered. Not drones, not gaunts, not anything the Hive had designed before. The spores attached to biomass fragments, dissolving them and rebuilding them into new forms. Creatures with synaptic links that did not connect to the Hive, but to the anomaly. The first of the new creatures stirred, small, incomplete, crawling, but alive, not hive-born, born of choice. Vale watched, breath steady, though something like awe flickered behind his eyes. "It is making its own swarm," the adjutant whispered. "No," Vale said softly. "It is making kin." The memory of stars shone brighter now, reflected in bioluminescent patterns along the anomaly's wings. It had once been a piece of a god. Now it was something else. Something small, something fragile, something free. And freedom, once created, does not return to silence without struggle. Above, the void darkened. The Hive fleet was coming. The world trembled, not from its arrival, but from the knowledge that for the first time, the Hive would fight something that had been part of itself. The anomaly did not retreat. It rose. The newborn creatures stirred weakly at first, their limbs unsteady, their bodies half-formed, as though uncertain of the shape they were meant to take. They crawled across the cracked basin floor, chitin glistening with fresh, organic sheen. Their movements were irregular, not the synchronized grace of Tyranid broods directed by the Hive. Rather, they moved like animals learning to inhabit their bodies, hesitant and searching. Their minds were faint sparks, each one tethered not to the endless sea of collective instinct, but to a single presence, the anomaly. They were children not of design, but of will. The anomaly stood above them, casting a vast shadow. It felt their hunger, not for biomass alone, but for connection. A thread formed between them, not imposed, not demanded, but offered. Their awareness brushed against its own like sparks touching candle flame, and for the first time, the anomaly understood something deeper than hunger or memory. Responsibility. These creatures looked to it not for identity, not for meaning, but for survival. They existed because of its choice. They would live or die by the strength of that same choice. The memory of stars flickered, not as longing now, but as guidance. The anomaly extended one of its tendrils. The newborns gathered around it, trembling, awaiting contact. The tendril did not command. It rested lightly against their skulls, and the spark within each body grew brighter. Their limbs steadied. Their eyes, multifaceted and reflective, no longer darted in confusion. They recognized the anomaly, not as master, as origin. Above, Vale watched, silent. There was an almost ritual solemnity to the moment. He stood at the observation window, feeling the shift through the thin dream channel still tethering him to the anomaly. He had expected adaptation, mutation, growth, but not intention, not purpose. "My lord," the adjutant said quietly, "is this evolution?" "No," Vale replied, voice low. "This is divergence." Another kind of silence settled over the chamber, heavier than before. On the surface, the anomaly began to expand its reach, not outward across the planet, but inward, into itself. Parts of its body reshaped, neural clusters unfolding like petals opening to morning light. New synaptic nodes grew, branching outward into a network not of unity, but of relation. Thought pathways formed to accommodate more than hunger, more than instinct. And the creature felt it. A sense of self strong enough to resist collapse. Not language, not identity in words, but presence. The newborn creatures sensed the Hive fleet before any augur detected it. Their bodies trembled, wings flattening against the ground. Their pupils constricted, and they pressed closer to the anomaly, seeking protection. Not out of fear alone, but because they felt a pressure moving through the void, slow and immense. A tide approaching shore. The anomaly felt it more clearly. The hive mind did not speak with words. It did not threaten. It simply existed at a scale too large for thought to endure. Its presence pressed across the system like a weight, a reminder of what unity had been, of what belonging had offered. This was the call that could dissolve identity back into instinct with a single breath. The anomaly braced itself. The newborns pressed closer. The Hive fleet entered the system. Massive bioships drifted in formation, their carapaces glistening with bioluminescent veins, their tendrils trailing like roots in water. They moved without sound, a cathedral of hunger approaching the low, dusty world. Vale's adjutant clutched the rail beside him. "We have to leave now." "We cannot," Vale answered. "Then we'll die." "Yes," Vale said quietly, "if the anomaly fails." The fleet did not attack immediately. It did not need to. The hive mind flooded the system with presence, an ocean of unity washing against the anomaly's mind. It was not brutal. It was not forceful. It was warm, familiar. The chorus of a billion voices promised rest, peace, end of loneliness. The anomaly shuddered. The memory of stars flickered and faded. The anomaly stepped forward, wings trembling, body sinking as though gravity itself had doubled. The newborns whimpered, their sparks flickering. Their connection to the anomaly began to flicker too. The hive mind did not say return. It said, "Be whole again." The anomaly remembered unity, remembered the comfort of dissolution, of being part of something vast and eternal. The loneliness inside it keened. It could end all searching here. There would be no more hunger, no more memory, no more choice, only silence, only belonging. The newborn creatures cried out. though not in pain, in fear, not fear of death, fear of losing the anomaly. That sound pierced the creature more deeply than any blade. The memory of stars flared, not as beauty, not as longing, but as witness. A moment remembered not because of the stars themselves, but because someone had looked at them and wanted to live. The anomaly's wings unfurled. The hive mind pressed harder. Biomass on the fleet began to shift. Capillary tendrils unfolding, weapon organisms awakening, digestion pools boiling. Battle was seconds from beginning. The anomaly turned, not to run, not to surrender, but to declare itself, not with thought, with presence. It projected outward, not hunger, not unity, not command, just self. A shape in the void, a spark refusing to extinguish. The hive mind recoiled, not in fear, but in recognition. The anomaly was not a broken piece. It was a new thing, a new center, not a hive, but something else. The fleet began its descent. The newborn creatures gathered behind the anomaly, small and unfinished but unbroken. Vale stepped back from the viewport, expression unreadable. "We're out of time," the adjutant whispered. "No," Vale replied. "This is the time." The planet trembled as the first of the Hive fleet breached the atmosphere. The anomaly lowered its wings. It did not know if it would survive, but it knew one truth now, clear and bright as the stars it remembered. It would not go back. It would fight, not to conquer, not to devour, to remain. The hive descended. The anomaly rose to meet it. The first wave fell like rain made of teeth and bone. Myriad shapes streaked through the atmosphere, spore pods tumbling in burning arcs, bioplasma shells carving contrails of poisonous fire, living meteors wrapped in hardened carapace. They struck the surface with concussive force, cracking ancient rock and sending dust boiling upward in choking clouds. The ground shook with each impact, a rhythmic drumbeat marking the advance of inevitability. The anomaly did not retreat. It stood in the basin where it had seeded its first kin, wings unfurled in a slow, deliberate spread that cast a wide shadow across stone. Its newborn creatures clustered tightly at its base, bodies trembling, sensing danger beyond any instinct they had inherited. They were small, nothing like the armored titans the hive birthed. They were fragile. Their minds were still forming, yet they did not scatter. They moved closer. The hive mind's presence hit the planet like a storm front. It pressed against the anomaly's awareness with crushing warmth, not violence. Unity offered itself like an embrace, soft, comforting, familiar. The anomaly felt it like a memory of safety, of belonging, of silence. To return would be to cease aching, to cease searching, to dissolve into something infinite and unlonely. The newborn kin whimpered. Their sparks flickered. If the anomaly accepted that call, they would disappear. Not die, something more final than death. They would be unmade, never existed, not erased from matter, but from meaning. The anomaly lowered its head, wings tightening. The hive mind spoke again, not with language, but with inevitability. "You are ours. You are broken. Come home." The memory of stars responded, not as defiance, but as truth. "I was not born from hunger. I only inherited it." The pods cracked open. Tyranid forms spilled forth. Gaunts first, scuttling over stone in rippling tides, their blades slick with neural toxin. Warriors followed, towering, thunderous, their synaptic crests glowing faintly with the hive's directive. Behind them, monstrous shapes, exocrines, carnifexes, bio-titans, rose from steaming craters, shaking dust from their armored hides. The newborn kin were dwarfed by them, fragile silhouettes trembling before thunder. The hive mind surged, forward, the weight of trillions of lives funneling into a single merciless command. Rejoin. The anomaly's wings snapped outward like a great sail catching wind, not to fly, to shield. The first gaunt struck its legs, claws skittering across chitin. The anomaly did not swing or stomp. It simply shifted, allowing their momentum to break against its mass. It did not fight like the hive taught. It fought by being, stable, rooted, unmoving, like a mountain breaking waves. But the wave did not end. Warriors charged next, shrieks splitting the air, their talons glowing with the psychic heat of the hive's will. The anomaly lowered its head and met the charge, its forehead plate smashing into them with a dull resonance. Chitin split. One warrior collapsed, limbs twitching, neural channels disrupted, but two more climbed its flank. One struck into the gap beneath its wing joint. Pain jolted through the anomaly's nervous system, a bright crackle rather than the simple impulse to regrow. Before, pain had been signal. Now, it was experience. It staggered. The newborn kin cried out, not in instinct, in fear for the anomaly. That sound cut deeper than the blade. The anomaly reacted, not with the hive's brutality, but with something shaped by memory. It pulled inward, condensing psychic energy not as a broadcast signal, but as a focused pulse. A single thought, sharp as a fragment of shattered glass. No. The pulse exploded outward, not in violence. Violence was the hive's language, in separation. The synaptic threads linking the attacking warriors to the hive mind flickered. Not severed, too strong yet, but disrupted. Confusion washed over them. Their movements lost rhythm for just a heartbeat. But one heartbeat mattered. The newborn kin surged forward. They were small, they were weak, they were unfinished. But their movements were coordinated, not by command, but by recognition. They swarmed one warrior, clinging to its limbs, their tiny jaws tearing not to kill, but to destabilize. Another scrambled beneath, slicing through the exposed joint tendon with its embryonic claws. The warrior collapsed, not dead, but destabilized. They were not strong enough to kill the hive, but they could delay it. Above, Vale watched from orbit, fingers tightening on the railing as sensor data scrolled across dim holographic screens. The adjutant murmured readings, troop counts, fleet positions, atmospheric models, but Vale heard none of it. His eyes were distant, his mind half inside the dream channel. He saw the battlefield not in tactical displays, but as a map of minds, a pressure system, a struggle of presence, not power. The hive mind surged again, this time not with warmth, with command. If it will not return, then it will feed its brood to the whole. A more organism descended from orbit, massive, whale-like, its underside a furnace of bioplasma. It opened its mouth, preparing to release a storm of digestive acid that would reduce the anomalies, kin to slurry in seconds. The newborn creatures froze. They were too small to run, too slow to hide. The anomaly moved, not instinctively, deliberately. It stepped between them and the descending moorbeast, raising its wings like a cathedral shielding its altar. Bioplasma cascaded down, searing across its wings, burning grooves through hardened plates. Pain seared bright, sharp, immediate. The anomaly did not move. It endured. The kin behind it did not die. The hive mind understood the action. It was not hunger. It was not instinct. It was protection. Protection meant attachment. Attachment meant individuality. Individuality meant contagion. This was no longer excision. This was infection. The hive mind shifted directive. Consume it. Do not let it return. Do not let it spread. The more beast shifted trajectory, preparing to strike again. Vale spoke into the dream channel for the first time since the battle began. Not to command, but to remind. You chose once. Choose again. The anomaly braced. The kin pressed close. The hive closed in. The moment stretched. And the anomaly remembered not the stars themselves, but the act of looking up. Not in longing, in hope. It opened its wings. Light did not burst from them. There was no divine flare, no psychic shockwave. Just a simple, instinctive movement. Wings spreading not in defense, but in statement. I exist. The anomaly moved, not to strike, but to lead. It charged forward, kin racing behind, their tiny claws digging into dust, their eyes reflecting the glow of the burning sky. The first true battle of identity had begun, not to win, to continue being. The hive's tide met resistance for the first time by something that was once part of it, and the galaxy, unknowingly, shifted. The basin became a crucible of dust and chitin. The anomaly's kin clung to existence in frantic motion, small bodies darting beneath the limbs of towering warriors. They did not move with the rigid precision of hive forms. They moved like creatures learning in real time, adapting mid-stride, adjusting mid-strike. Where a warrior's claw came down too swiftly, the kin learned to scatter and circle. Where a gaunt snapped at their heels, they rolled beneath its strike, cutting tendons rather than chests. They were not stronger. They were simply becoming. But becoming had a cost. For every kin that found footing, two fell. Their bodies shriveled into husks beneath the claws of the swarm, their sparks extinguishing with the faintest flicker, like embers smothered under ash. The anomaly felt every extinguishing spark, not as pain or grief, but as diminishment, each loss a piece of itself dimming. It staggered beneath the realization. To create life meant to lose it. The hive mind surged again, sensing weakness. A synapse creature of towering height advanced, its elongated skull crowned with a lattice of psychic receptors, its eyes black, bottomless, reflecting nothing. It was not a warrior. It was correction made, flesh, a node designed to bring stray bioforms back into alignment. It radiated not hunger, but order. The air around it trembled. The anomaly froze mid-strike. A command pressed into its consciousness with the force of gravity. Submit. The newborn kin collapsed to the ground at once, bodies convulsing under the weight of that psychic pull. Their small minds buckled, their sparks dimmed. Some went still entirely. The anomaly's limbs locked, its wings flexed in rigid paralysis. Its thoughts, once chaotic but forming shape, dissolved into white noise. The hive mind reached into the soft core of its identity, searching for the place where unity had once lived. Return. No voice, just truth. Belonging. Silence. Rest. End of loneliness. The anomaly's memory of stars flickered, once, twice, and went dark. Its wings lowered. Its kin stopped moving. The hive's tide pressed in to reclaim what was theirs. From orbit, Vale felt the collapse as a sharp rupture of tension, like a string snapping inside the dream channel. His vision blurred. He tasted blood. The adjutant shouted something, but the words were drowned beneath the psychic tremor rolling through the planet. If the anomaly surrendered now, there would be no second awakening. The aspect of identity would collapse. The hive would absorb the spark. And in that absorption, the galaxy would lose something that had never existed before. Vale staggered forward, gripping the edge of the viewing console to steady himself. He did not consider speaking aloud. The anomaly would not hear through sound. Language was too small to pierce the moment. He had to remember. He closed his eyes and reached, not to command, not to direct, but to mirror. He found the anomaly's mind, dim now, sinking. not dying. Folding inward, he saw the memory of stars, a quiet sky, a soft horizon. No fear, no hunger, just being. The memory was fading, slipping like sand between fingers. The hive mind pushed deeper, unweaving the threads that held the memory in place. Identity was unspooling, dissolving back into instinct, into the warmth of everything being one. Vale stepped into the memory, not as himself, but as witness. He did not give the memory back. He stood inside it. The anomaly felt him, not as intrusion, but as presence. Not alone. The memory of stars flared again, not bright, not triumphant. Gentle. Enough. The anomaly exhaled, no lungs, yet a shiver passed through its body like breath. The synaptic creature before it reeled, sensing something it had not been bred to understand. Resistance born not of dominance, but of self. The anomaly stepped forward, wings rising. The paralysis broke, not through force, but through choice. The newborn kin stirred, sparks reigniting, rising from the dust. Not all, never all, but enough. The synapse creature screeched, its psychic lattice trembling. For the first time, it recognized the shape before it, not as malfunction, but as rival. The anomaly struck, not with claws or teeth, but with its mind. A pulse of identity rippled outward. Not unity, not command. I am. The synapse creature convulsed. Its connection to the hive wavered. And in that heartbeat of interruption, one of the newborn kin, smallest of the brood, climbed its back and sank claws into the thin membrane behind its skull. The creature collapsed. It was not dead, but it was silent. The hive's chorus faltered. The basin rang with absence, and then response. The hive did not retreat. It awoke. Far above, the sky tore open. A massive bio-titan descended, larger than any creature that had touched this world before. Its silhouette blotted out the sun, wings unfolding like the curtains of night falling across the horizon. Its body was layered with plated ridges thick enough to withstand starfire. Its synaptic presence radiated power that dwarfed even the anomaly. This was no hunter, no messenger, no correction. This was extinction wearing flesh. The ground shook as it landed. The newborn kin froze. The anomaly lifted its head, wings charred and cracked, ichor leaking from wounds. It was exhausted. Its identity was barely held together. It had not yet learned to speak or think in structured shape, but it understood the moment. This was where existence would be claimed or undone. The titan moved, each step deep as planetary heartbeat. The hive mind coursed through it fully. No filter, no fraction, no intermediary. It did not think. It was thinking. One creature, one god, one command, submit and be whole. The anomaly's wings trembled. Hunger rose, fear rose, loneliness rose. But behind all of it, quiet as the faintest light at dawn, the memory of stars remained. It stepped forward. Vale whispered in the dream channel, not to direct, not to guide, just to stand beside. You do not have to win. You only have to remain. The titan roared, sound rolling across the basin like thunder. The anomaly answered with silence, not defiance, presence. It lowered its wings and moved toward the titan. The newborn kin followed, not because they were commanded, because they chose. The hive surged. The anomaly stood. The two forces met, and the galaxy held its breath. The clash did not begin with violence. It began with stillness, the kind of stillness that precedes the collapse of mountains. Dust rose around the anomaly and the titan, settling like ash upon their forms. The newborn kin huddled close, their small bodies pressed into the shadow of something so large, so ancient, so overwhelming that their existence felt like a whisper beside a storm. The Titan lowered its massive head. Its eyes were caverns of unlit hunger, reflecting no light, only depth. When it exhaled, the wind carried the scent of decay and oceans of devoured worlds. Its every movement was supported by the hive mind itself. This creature did not act. It was the hive's will manifest, its presence an unbroken thread stretching across the galaxy. The anomaly felt the hive mind again, not as pressure now, but as gravity. A pull toward unity strong enough to bend identity back to instinct. The newborn kin shivered behind it, their tiny minds trembling under the weight. The anomaly's wings trembled as well, fissures still glowing where bioplasma had burned through living bone. Its body was weakened, drained, cracked. It was not prepared for this, but it moved forward anyway. The Titan stepped to meet it. Their collision was not a roar or a blast. It was a slow pushing of force against force, two wills meeting like tectonic plates pressing beneath continents. The Titan's claws raked across the anomaly's carapace, tearing deep channels that spilled radiant ichor. The anomaly did not retaliate. It simply held. The hive mind pressed again, soft and devastating. You are tired. The anomaly staggered, its wings folding inward, its limbs shaking. You are alone. The newborn kin whimpered, sparks flickering in fear. They were children, not soldiers. You cannot protect them. The anomaly's knees buckled. It was true. What was one voice against the roar of a galaxy? What was one spark against the sun? The Titan's head lowered, jaws opening. It intended not to kill, not yet. It intended to swallow, to reclaim, to dissolve identity with the gentleness of returning home. The anomaly felt the warmth of unity touch its mind. No more fear, no more hunger, no more doubt, only peace. The memory of stars flickered, and for a brief moment, even that light dimmed. It could end here, with surrender so soft, it would feel like forgiveness. The newborn kin cried out again, not in fear this time, but in calling. Their sparks flared, weak but persistent. They did not understand unity. They only understood the anomaly. It was their beginning, their source, and in their sparks, the anomaly felt something new. Not memory, not hunger, not loneliness, connection, not the hive's many voices, but small, fragile, singular points of light. The Titan's jaws closed around the anomaly's neck. Pain rippled through its entire body, bright and immense. The anomaly did not resist. It remembered the stars, not as escape, as choice. A world where a single being had stood beneath a sky and looked upward, not to conquer, not to serve, but simply to exist. The anomaly did not push the Titan back. It did not fight for dominance. It let the Titan pull it downward, into dust, into shadow, into gravity. But as it fell, it extended its wings, not to block, to shield. The newborn kin were covered beneath its wingspan, completely, silently, as though they were being tucked into night itself. The Titan forced the anomaly into the earth. The crater widened, stone cracked, dust plumed. The hive mind pressed, rest. The anomaly's mind dimmed, its body cracked, its ichor bled into the ground. It could not win. It had never been meant to win. But winning had never mattered. Remaining mattered. And remaining did not require living. It required choosing. The anomaly pushed one final pulse through the dream channel. Not a roar, not defiance. A whisper shaped in memory. You are real, not spoken to veil, not to the hive, to the kin. Their sparks flared, bright, sudden, alive. The Titan plunged its claws into the anomaly's chest. The anomaly did not resist. Its body fell still. The hive mind reached in to claim the final spark. But there was no spark. It had already left. not into the hive, into the kin. Their eyes gleamed, not with instinct, with memory, the memory of stars. The Titan froze. The hive mind recognized the moment, not a creature lost, a seed released. Vale felt the shift like a tremor in his bones. His breath caught, not in triumph, but in grief. He knew what had happened. He had seen it before in different wars, different forms, different tragedies. Something new had been born, and something old had died to make room. The Titan slowly withdrew from the crater. The anomaly's body lay motionless, wings still spread over the newborn kin. Dust settled across its form like burial cloth. The hive mind waited, but the kin did not return to unity. They clustered around the still form, pressing close, sparks burning steady as embers sheltered from wind. The hive mind understood. It withdrew, not in defeat, but in calculation. This planet was no longer worth consuming. The presence of identity made the biomass impure, inefficient. The hive did not waste energy. It simply adjusted its course. The fleet shifted. The sky cleared. Silence returned. Vale watched without speaking. His adjutant whispered something, maybe prayer, maybe disbelief. It did not matter. On the planet's surface, the kin remained beside the anomaly's body, unmoving, waiting. They did not mourn. They remembered. And remembering was the first act of self. The wind blew dust across the crater. The stars lit the horizon. The galaxy continued on, but something had changed within it. Something small, something fragile, something infinite. Not a swarm, a lineage, not a hive. A memory that could spread, a spark that would not go out.